The housing crisis is wreaking havoc nationally. Our podcast discusses how it is playing out specifically in Black Berkeley, California, chronicling the lived experiences behind what people call gentrification, detailing our endeavor for our right to stay and our right to return. Brought to you by Healthy Black Families. I am your host, Deb, and this is Telling Our Stories, the Housing Chronicles. Welcome. Greetings, everyone. Today on Telling Our Stories, we have the City of Berkeley present in large capacity. We have the Mayor of Berkeley, Jesse Arreguín, Councilperson Ben Bartlett for District 3 of Berkeley, and last but definitely not least, we have Jaqueline McCormick, who's Chief of Staff to the Mayor. I'm glad to have all of you here to talk about this new initiative, which the city calls Equitable Black Berkeley. Hi.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Great to be here.
The pleasure is mine. So, tell us a little bit about what you all do in the city of Berkeley. Can we start off with the mayor?
Absolutely. Well, I am the mayor of the city of Berkeley, elected by the entire city of Berkeley. And my job is not only to help chair our city council, but work with the city administration to implement city policies and programs. And I'm the co-sponsor of the Equitable Black Berkeley Initiative with Councilmember Bartlett. So we're really excited to talk about this initiative with you today and why it's so critical that we advance this work to repair the harm that's been inflicted, not just on our South Berkeley community, but our Black community in Berkeley. And this is important work that really builds on the work towards reparations that's happening throughout the country. And I just want to acknowledge Councilor Bartlett's leadership and also advancing the conversation around reparations in the city of Berkeley. He's been an incredible leader for racial justice and racial equity. So thank you.
Thank you. That's a great segue to our council person, Ben Bartlett. Can you tell us what you do in the city of Berkeley?
Thank you. My name is Ben Bartlett, and I'm the city council person for District 3, and currently the vice mayor of the city of Berkeley. Really happy to be in that role. Backing the mayor up. And so I represent District 3, which is South Berkeley, the historically Black district, and also the historically radical activist district. And so it's frontline in terms of gentrification and activism and intense debates, and really helps drive much of the stuff Berkeley's famous for. And so I look out for the constituents, and I try to channel their passions into good ideas that can trigger change and make our city proud. And I, as the mayor mentioned, I'm really excited to have worked with him closely on developing a reparations policy framework, which we passed unanimously under his direction, and also, co-author and co-sponsor with the mayor on the Equitable Black Berkeley Initiative, which, with Jackie, his chief of staff's input, a really creative new mechanism to drive lasting and sustainable change and a change of conditions going forward. So I'm happy to be here today to talk about everything and learn from the mayor while he's here with me too.
If I can add one thing, which is that the brainchild of the Equitable Black Berkeley Initiative is Jacqueline. And I just really, for her vision and her commitment to racial equity.
Yes, Jacqueline, it's an honor to welcome you to the show. And let the people know what you do.
Well, as the mayor said, I'm his chief of staff, and I am the lead for this Equitable Black Berkeley Initiative. And I appreciate him saying that I was the brainchild of this, but without his support, his and Councilmember Bartlett's support, it wouldn't be an initiative. So I'm just so grateful that I was able to ideate with them and get their full, unthrottled support so we can move this important project forward.
Thank you all. It's important for me. You're here speaking in the capacity of your jobs, but it's very important to let the people know the human behind the city worker. So if you could please tell us, each of you, what brought you to the work of public service?
Well, I'm happy to kick things off. I've been a lifelong political activist, actually starting since I was 5 years old. And I have always felt a strong desire to fight against injustice and to fight for economic, social, racial justice. And so that's the lens that I come to with the work that I'm doing as mayor. And in my nearly 20 years of public service here in the city of Berkeley. And I really do think that Berkeley has a responsibility to lead and to demonstrate progressive leadership. And that really has been the lens that I have really used in the work that I've done as mayor these past 6 years. So for me, it's a lifelong commitment, starting when I was 5 years old, to the work I did to rename Army Street in San Francisco after my hero Cesar Chavez, my work with the farm workers movement, and then the work that brought me to Berkeley when I was an undergraduate at UC Berkeley, fighting for housing justice, fighting against displacement, for protecting rent control, for protecting people from displacement, and for affordable housing. And obviously, these are issues which we'll touch upon in our conversation this afternoon that continue to be a critical challenge to our community. And one of the reasons why I'm so excited and so supportive of the EBB initiative to help us try to get as much affordable housing, deeply affordable housing, and to bring people back who were displaced from South Berkeley back to the South Berkeley community, and to acknowledge the harm that's happened, to repair the harm that's happened, and to bring in a model of equitable economic development going forward.
Ben, do you want to chime in on what brought you to work?
Well, yeah. So a lot of through lines correspond with the mayor's story as well. I'm from Berkeley, and my family's been here for a very long time, more than a century. And we've done well in Berkeley as a Black family, and we loved it. And then my parents divorced, and so I kind of grew up on the road for a while in other parts of the country. And in that time, it was interesting. No matter where we were and how challenging things got, I always knew that I was special because I was from Berkeley. And I always had that lodestar back there in California was who I really was and where I was really from. And my mom talked that way. My sister did. It got us through a lot of challenging times. So Berkeley took on a really mythical, emotional meaning for me. And if you watch me at these meetings, sometimes you'll see I'm always trying to be Berkeley first and put Berkeley up. But through life, I'd gone on and was focused on starting a career and having fun. And even though I knew about service, because I did have my uncle was the congressman from Berkeley, Ron Dellums. I knew about it. I knew it was out there and people could do it. It was demystified for me. But I didn't have that much of an interest. I was really interested in honestly just living my own life and having fun. And then out of nowhere, the rug got pulled out from me when my mother, who was living in this awesome house with 4 of her friends from high school and elementary school, a bunch of senior citizens, all retired, their landlord sold the building to a developer. And immediately, the new property management development team started harassing them. They turned their heat off, and in the severely cold winter that year, like this winter here, turned the heat off on them, and they got sick. They would damage the workers would damage their cars. They turned their water off for weeks at a time. It was so severe, the stressing and the harassment that people started leaving. And so, I had to all of a sudden put my attention on it. And I was like, okay, well, let's go ahead and let's get her and her friends into senior housing. And then I saw there was no senior housing. And I was surprised. I was like, well, what do you mean? They paid taxes all these years. There's senior housing, right? Well, no, there wasn't. And there was a wait list for more than a decade. And all these resources were not being allocated that were available at the state, federal, county, and maybe the city level as well. And so at that moment, I knew I had to get involved. And we ended up saving my mom because my wife and I are lawyers, and used the rent board facility to get her protected. But on the day of the hearing, her last remaining neighbor that was with her and going to challenge the landlord and get compensation and all that business, he left. He didn't go through with the hearing because it felt futile for him. He said, if they don't want us here, we can't stay anymore. And, he was, he had Parkinson's. He was a former dock worker who had stopped the South African shipments in those protest days, and, a Korean War vet from Berkeley, real hero. And when he gave up, that crushed my heart. And I knew that I had to do something, and that they needed to start the city, the government, the power system at large needed to start respecting people. And so I got involved, and the rest is history. I've been focused on displacement and these same issues to try to correct these systemic issues for people, the personas like the ones I just described.
Yeah, that's a lot. And it's interesting because how long ago was that, Ben?
I mean, I've been in office 6 years now. This is 7 years ago. This just happened, and I jumped in right away afterwards, and just, on a mission. And that the gentleman, he died too, by the way. He went to go stay on someone's couch in Antioch, where there's no facilities that we have here, no services. And he passed away. He died.
Yeah. A lot of work to do. I'm very grateful that you and Jesse jumped in. Jacqueline, what brought you to the work of public service?
Well, I probably lasted longer outside of public service than Ben did because of our age difference. But my husband and I moved up to Berkeley. He was a Berkeley native in 1996. So, we've been here for a good long, or I feel like my home now is Berkeley. I did find my forever place. As I tell everybody, Berkeley is not beige, it's Technicolor, and I never wanted to live a beige life. So I certainly got what I wanted by coming here. In around 2007, 2008, our neighborhood groups started pushing back on the fourth floor construction and the impact that was going to have coming into Berkeley from a traffic perspective. And I got engaged with our neighborhood group during that time. And it ended up running for office. But since 2010, I started going to city council meetings. And I think for what is now almost 13 years, I have maybe only missed 6 council meetings in all of that period of time. So I guess you could call me a gadfly because I've been engaged for so long. But when Mayor Arreguín was running for mayor in 2016. I was on his kitchen cabinet, and it just so happened that they needed some administrative help, and I raised my hand and ended up running his campaign. And as a part of that, he asked me if I would want to come and work in the office. And I hadn't done public service work. I'd always been an entrepreneur in that kind of, so that was a big learning curve for me. Things move slower in government, but I jumped at the opportunity. And while it can be incredibly exacerbating at times, for a lot of reasons, it truly is the most rewarding work I've ever done, because it's really making a difference in people's lives and in this community, and ensuring that we have a thriving, resilient community ongoing. And that's why this piece of it, which has been missing, is so important to me.
Thank you. So from your vantage point as city officials, how would you characterize the current housing situation in the city of Berkeley and the greater Bay Area? Mayor, if you can jump on that.
I would characterize the housing crisis as a housing emergency. And if you go down the streets of Berkeley or Oakland or San Francisco, you see people living in tents, people living in their vehicles. And this is a region that is one of the most wealthiest regions in the country. Not too far from here, across the bay, is Silicon Valley. We have multi-billion-dollar international tech corporations who are headquartered there. And just the disparity between, growing poverty that we see on the streets, and I think homelessness is a humanitarian crisis, and incredible wealth just shows how broken our capitalist system is. And the fact that we need to create a system that is equitable and that redistributes wealth and that prioritizes the human rights and human needs of all people. And so it is an emergency. The fact that we have growing homelessness on our streets, the fact that teachers and people that work and have lived in Berkeley for many years are being pushed out because they can't afford the rising cost of housing because of real estate speculation is unacceptable. And that is, I think, at the core of what we're trying to accomplish here with the EBB initiative, which is recognizing that South Berkeley, a historically Black neighborhood, has seen a huge decline in its Black population. And that is because of the lack of available and affordable housing and the displacement pressure that we're seeing in neighborhoods in South Berkeley. And so we are working hard along with EBB to create a right to return, a local preference policy that would give people that were previously displaced the right to live in affordable housing in South Berkeley. But we need to create the affordable housing for people to come back and live in, and affordable home ownership opportunities so people can build wealth and stability. Because what we saw at the Ashby BART station was a whole neighborhood that was torn down to make way for this transit station. And those families were displaced. Those businesses were displaced. So we have a responsibility, the city and BART, to repair the harm that was inflicted in the 1960s and 1970s, and to bring people back, to bring economic vitality, to bring residents back to South Berkeley. And that is the model of equity and that we hope to advance through this initiative. So it's an emergency. Part of it is we haven't built enough housing, but we haven't built enough affordable housing. And we also have an economic system that has allowed real estate speculation to run rampant. And we have some of the strongest protections in Berkeley for renters, but we still see people being displaced. So we need to build more housing. We need to curb speculation through things like the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, which would give tenants the right to buy their properties. So there's a lot that we can do, and there's a lot that we will do.
So we are here to talk about the project called Equitable Black Berkeley, EBB. But before we do that, can you tell us some of the ways the city of Berkeley has previously attempted or is currently attempting to mitigate the housing crisis in Berkeley?
Well, I think a number of things. I think, Berkeley is really demonstrating statewide leadership in addressing our housing crisis. One, we are building more housing after many years of not producing housing. And we're building housing all over our city. The reality is that Grove Street, now Martin Luther King, was a dividing line in which Asian Americans, African Americans, and other people of color were not allowed to buy homes. And that pushed people to the west of Grove Street, now MLK, and walled off some of the most affluent and high resource neighborhoods in Berkeley for people to live in. And that is the pattern of our built environment in Berkeley, where there are whole neighborhoods, the Claremont, North Berkeley, where African Americans and working families cannot live in. And so we are trying to dismantle that history of systemic racism in our housing policy by building housing, affordable housing in every part of our city. That is a priority. So that's something we are working on. We just approved our housing element on Wednesday, which makes that a priority. We need to recognize that single-family zoning was racist in its origins. Single-family zoning started in the Elmwood to keep black people out of the Elmwood district and to keep Asian Americans out of the Elmwood district. And that is the foundation in which our zoning, our land use in Berkeley is built on. So we are committed to ending racist exclusionary zoning and increasing housing opportunities throughout our city. But also we're focusing on helping provide the funding and to create deeply affordable housing, including permanent supportive housing for people that are formerly homeless. I'm proud that one project that we just opened, several months ago is the Berkeley Way project in downtown Berkeley, 142 units of affordable housing, the largest amount of permanent supportive housing that Berkeley's ever created. And we've literally been able to move people that have lived on our streets for years, experiencing homelessness, off the streets into their own apartment. And that is how we end homelessness, is by providing affordable housing for people. So, there's a great deal of work we're doing around affordable housing. Voters in 2018 passed Measure O, our affordable housing bond. And we have been able to help fund 800 units of deed-restricted affordable housing. But we know that's not enough. We know there's a lot more that we have to do. And so we want to be creative about how we can think outside the box. And that was kind of the genesis behind EBB, which I'm sure Jack can talk about. This was sort of an ideation process to kind of think outside the box about how can we get as much of deeply affordable housing in South Berkeley as possible. We need to look at how we can be creative to leverage development, to leverage investment, to be able to get deeply affordable housing, to be able to get public open space and other community benefits that the community wants. And so that's our goal, looking at capturing that value, that the increased value that the private market is gaining, to flow back into the community, to benefit the community. That is the goal. Building affordable housing is expensive, and so it does require public subsidy. And so that is why we are exploring a number of different approaches through the EBB initiative to get as much deeply affordable housing as we can in South Berkeley and Ashby Park. Councilor Bartlett may have some other thoughts, but
well, so just to build on what the mayor was so eloquently expressing, here in Berkeley, of course, we are a small city with limited resources, but yet subject to incredible demand. We have everything you want in a city, right? It's walkable, big university, there's jobs here, there's transportation, there's healthcare centers, there's major shopping, an excellent school system. So we have incredible demand here, and that makes us prey to intense speculation and intense activity in the housing and economic turnover sector. So much so that the sort of red line areas have become the gentrification areas now, where the people are just being pushed out in droves, despite all of our protections. So we've had to really get creative as a city and create resources where there were none, and leverage everything we see. It's if you were to break out the list of all we've done to mitigate the housing disaster, it's incredibly impressive. So we taxed rentals of landlords. That's one source. We did a big public bond for affordable housing. In my district, we were able to leverage cap and trade dollars to make a new affordable housing building where a credit union was. We've leveraged veterans dollars to help build the building the mayor mentioned, the large supportive housing one. We're exploring prefabrication and P3 models to do sustainable, replicable models of supportive care and affordable housing. We have small sites programs, we call this. This is where we buy existing buildings and convert them into affordable housing with a greater discount and greater speed. We're helping churches create housing where they can leverage their property lot value to build affordable housing on their site. The mantra of preserve, protect, and produce. Preserve existing affordable housing, protect tenants, which we have some strong tenant protections, some of the strongest in the country, and produce affordable housing as well. We're doing all three. And it's really a testament to the will of the mayor and the council, and our ability to harness the genius of our community and the passion of our community to drive creative changes. It's really impressive. And this is all understanding that we are all the way down in the bottom of the fire hose. And so the problems are all here, and the resources we have to reach up for, and all in the context of what appears to be a failing capitalistic system. So we're making up for it on the ground, and we need to extend our reach and extend our power above us to get more resources and expand our solutions to the whole state.
Thank you, Ben. And expand we must. Can you define for us what roles city government can play in what is commonly known as development?
We play, a traditional role of when somebody wants to build something, they have to conform to our local laws. And these are laws that are developed through community input and adopted by democratically elected leaders, the city council. And the idea behind zoning is to make sure that we have rules to make sure that things that are built are appropriate and they fit into the community, they reflect the community's values and priorities. So they gotta conform to our laws, our regulations. But there's a lot more that Councilor Bartlett had talked about that we can do more proactively to try to achieve the kind of affordable community that we want to see. Aside from our traditional roles in evaluating and approving land use decisions.
I just go on for just a second and say that whole litany of list of things that we do that were articulated by the mayor and Councilmember Bartlett are the reasons I work in public service. That's the good work that we're doing. It's incredible.
Yeah, that is the good work. On that note, I invite you all to stay tuned for episode 6, which will be the second part of our 3-part interview with councilperson for Berkeley's District 3, Ben Bartlett, the mayor of Berkeley, Jesse Arreguín, and chief of staff to the mayor, Jaqueline McCormick. We will discuss Ashby Station, which is one of 2 hefty developments underway by Bay Area Rapid Transit in Berkeley, otherwise known as BART, and includes not only the actual station, but a large area that juts out from it called the Adeline Corridor. What is this administration's response to the housing crisis in Berkeley? How is the city of Berkeley and this administration uniquely positioned to respond to that? How is Equitable Black Berkeley being bold and innovative in attempting to back the local community's demands for repairing, rebuilding, and restoring itself? Stay tuned. Written, edited, and hosted by Deborah Hailu, Telling Our Stories program coordinator at Healthy Black Families, Inc. Audio engineered by Adrian Davis and Salim Naji Ullah of One Hitter Entertainment. Shout out to James Shields of Creative Shields for our beautiful podcast artwork. Lakila Shahid, Office and Media Manager at Healthy Black Families, Inc. for the many ways she steps up and bridges our gaps. And Wilhelmina Wilson, Executive Director at Healthy Black Families, Inc. for bringing all of this together. Casting out the net of Black love in service of all humanity, this has been Telling Our Stories, the Housing Chronicles. See you next time.